Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Fateless Podcast discussion. And in this episode, we are going to be touching on some balance issues in mobile games out there when it comes to nerfing or buffing champions, altering them after events and things like that. Going to be joined by Sham, Dirk, and then Mtash making a first appearance here on the Fateless Podcast. So Mtash, go ahead and just refresh everybody's memory on kind of what you do around here and all that good stuff.
I'm just like the ultimate gamer. I play all the games, which allows me to give the best feedback possible. I mean, that's all there is to it. Honestly, I'm someone that has been honestly falling in love with this project as we go. Every time we have a meeting, I'm like, when's this dropping? Because I am a gamer that just likes games. I like getting challenged by different things, and I like what we're cooking so far. That being said, I've played a lot of games, and I've had a lot of heartbreak because certain things have changed. And that's why I actually wanted to jump in on this one, because it's something that speaks to me. The big one being League of Legends back in the day. A lot of my champions that I played got changed or nerfed, and like kind of hurts. So it's a very interesting topic. You have to be very delicate, with how you do things and stuff. So
yeah.
Well, so for that's actually a good place to start. Like if you look at a game like League of Legends, that's their strategy, frankly, right? It's like, all right, put out a character, and they're like, check out this new character. Look how awesome it is. And everyone's like, oh my god, that character's broken. And so they buy the character, and then in like, I don't know, 2-3 months, whatever the next cycle is, they're like, guys, we listen to the community. We understand what happened, so we're going to rebalance things. We're going to nerf that character. And the community's like, wow, good. Thank you for listening. But and then there's a new champion, and that champion, oh, what surprise! That character's kind of imbalanced and whatever. But I do feel like that's one end of the spectrum. But that's like $30 and less than that, actually, $10, $20, whatever it is. What I guess we're seeing, what we're seeing now is, or what we would need to talk about it, I guess, is in a game where you're spending $500. $1,000, way crazy.
And you're not even actually buying the champion. You're spending $1,000 to gamble on a chance to get that. So it's like people go really hard, and you're preying on gambling addiction to get people to go really hard on buying an overpowered character, and then to just nerf it afterward, be like, "Oh, thanks for the money, loser!" Like it definitely sets a really bad precedent. So I'd understand why they don't nerf characters in games that accidentally maybe release overpowered characters for Christmas and run events on them.
Specifically.
Yeah. There's a game I've been playing, Epic 7, and they have a very interesting way of doing it. So sometimes they buff a character and change them, and I think they just assume like, okay, everyone's probably okay if they're getting stronger or slightly changing, but if they change up a character's kit enough, they change the way an ability works, or they look at it and say, yeah, like this character is potentially nerfed. They actually give out like a selector, so you can cash that unit in and choose any other unit in the game, and all the resources you put into them, you get it back. So if I used all my legendary tomes leveling up Siphi, and we're like, yeah, by the way, now she doesn't give block debuffs and block speed or a speed increase. It's just like, okay, well, I don't want her now, because that's why I got her. That's why
any
I built her.
champion in the game.
Any champion, but it can't be any of the new. So it's like, if it was like a normal unit, any of the normal units other than maybe like the most recent ones. Sometimes it's like any unit that was released at the time that unit was released, because it's like, well, arguably you could just like cash in any unit and just be like, well, all the new units are better. Because if you look at some of the old units of Raid or any game, there's going to be like a couple stinkers that haven't been updated, and there is typically power creep in games. But Epic 7 is pretty crazy. They're like, we took your thing, we changed it, and it's not your thing anymore. It's not why you built that unit. Hwoyong, she was this like tank buster unit, and you built all attack, no defense, and she would just nuke something, and then they changed it, and everyone's like, well, now she doesn't work, so we don't want her. And it's a very interesting thing. And I mean, at the same time, I recognize that maybe that seems too generous to some people, but if you're playing my game and you love my game and I change the thing you love, I don't want to take it away from you either. And then you hate me, and then you don't want to play the game anymore either. It's like, it is a give and take. You guys are paying the bills and keeping the game online. So
yeah, no, that's a great call. I mean, when I hear that, I'm like, actually, that's a nice idea. That's an awesome idea, because I mean, it's what they used to do in Hearthstone, I think, right? If they would change cards, in Hearthstone collectible card game, Blizzard's collectible card
refund
game.
it for full value.
Yeah, you would just get the full value. Like, it was actually like, some of the people would be happy. They'd be like, yes,
Yeah.
they nerfed this card.
That's what I was gonna
alright,
say.
they
If
just
they let
wiped
you
their
pick
account.
any champion, you're almost hoping they nerf a champion because I can trade it in for a Krisia or
yeah.
It's one you didn't use in the first place. You didn't really whatever they're like changing it to. You're never gonna use it again. Like, oh boy, I could cash this in and finally make this other deck I've been wanting to do.
I mean, in Epic 7, do they have like, so like in Raid they have like void shards and there's void affinity characters. Do they have like something that equivalent? Do they have something like that? Or could you pick people
they're
in
called
that?
Moonlight Heroes, and they haven't nerfed a Moonlight hero in a long time, and I think that's because they're like, ooh, we got to be really careful here. They've buffed a lot of them. Like, they just did a round of buffs, and that's cool. But it's usually just some of the normal characters that are not the specialty ones that it happens to. And since I started playing, I think it's only happened, 3 times in like maybe like 3-4 years, because I just kind of played it passively when I started Genshin. And I think it's like 3 or 4 times where they said, yep, this is egregious enough that the character is definitely a different function. Because it's like, okay, this unit places 2 bleeds. Well, there's a different one that places 3. So it's like, let's maybe rework their kit and give them a new identity.
Bring them.
And so that's usually when they do it. And so in a lot of cases, what people do is just like, well, I'll just get that new unit that did that function better, or whatever.
Get
it might
the better
be.
version of my old
Essentially,
unit.
yeah. So, but yeah, they haven't. Since I started, I don't think they've done a selector for like a Moonlight hero or a Void, but they have done some events where you can earn one for free and different things. That game is in a weird spot where the packs and like the prices to spend in the game are so expensive that it's kind of like it kind of like feels bad. And then with how generous they are, it's like, well, why would I? Like, if I just wait, I'll get everything. And I don't know. It's like a weird situation where I don't know. I haven't felt like super inclined to do it. And I don't mind
are
it.
you a spender in, like, are you typically a spender in these games? Are you like in your previous games that you played? Do you get in there?
I only did really with Genshin because I was covering it and doing YouTube, and I wanted all the characters. But then I realized I was like, I kind of feel like I'm cheating as well because I have all the characters and all the options. And then I made a free-to-play account, and I just enjoyed that way more. The challenge and making that type of content. So I usually play the games free-to-play just because I want it to be as hard as possible, kind of thing. But I think I've spent like a little bit on Raid, and other than that, nothing. Just Genshin and Raid. I've spent money on. So
yeah, it's funny. I feel like for me, and I want to get some of Brad's opinion on this, but for me, like, I usually like to kind of do that too, where I'll be like, okay, if I really like this game, I'll spend on one account, but then I'm kind of like, man, so I have like a really sweet like main account, but I really kind of want to do this free to play account, so I'll just make a second account, you know what I mean, and then really try to be really efficient and optimize and kind of play. I mean, it is just a different experience. Like, I think both experiences are fun. Like, it's fun to get in there and have all the characters and collect, but it's also fun to optimize and min-max and just spend the only things that the developers are giving you. So I don't know, it's just a different challenge. Like, if I'm into a game, I like to do both.
I also find that, like, as I'm getting older, like, I don't have time to just like grind that stupid thing for 10 hours free to play. It's like my life is more valuable, and I even look at some of the units that have come out in Raid. I looked at some of the new events, and it's like, I am not going to do Champion Chase for 20 hours to get this unit. Like, I'm just not going to do it. I would rather buy them and use them if I need them. And there are those situations where, you know, there's usually like a monthly pack which just gives more gems, which allows me to play more when I can, and stuff like that. I'm definitely more open to, like the battle pass type stuff where I'm playing anyways and getting rewards. So
feels like kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, where it makes your time more efficient, or like the energy in the game more efficient. Yeah,
yeah.
I want to get those. The monthly ones value.
So Brad, from your perspective, like how do you feel about I mean, and I guess we can talk a little bit more specifically about what happened in Watcher, where it wasn't actually a nerf or a buff to a character. What they ended up doing is they had a character several characters that are just obviously very strong, right? They're just like, I'd even put them as overpowered, right? Let's just put it there. Let's be honest. And then they all they did was they kind of like stealth nerfed the drop rates. Yeah, exactly. They stealth dropped the drop rates on those characters in particular. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, stealth nerfing the drop rates is pretty brutal. But you will see sometimes in games, like I know the majority of our audience has tried Raid. Some games will break it down per champion. They'll be like, Siphi is a 0.01% rate, and then Mountain King is a 0.09. Like, he's way more likely to drop because he's less desirable. As long as they're forthright with it and not ninja doing it behind the scenes and people have no idea, I'm a lot more okay with it. But to like the nerfing things after you buy it, that's really difficult. And the first like way to compare it that comes to my head is like if I go to a car dealership and I buy a Dodge Viper and I get home and the car dealership calls me up and they're like, we're turning your Dodge Viper into a Ford Festiva. Well, now I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I thought I was buying a Dodge Viper. I don't want to, like, what is this? I wouldn't have bought it. So you get these events where you're spending to YOLO some shards for fun because I want this amazing champion. You get that amazing champion, and now it's a Ford Festiva, and you're like, well, I wouldn't have even done the event. So, it's really brutal to do that to people.
And how did they find out that did people like data mine that the nerfs were changed?
So they didn't say anything about it.
It's kind of something that's been going on for a while now because they've had different rates for different heroes. The way they display it in game is like you've got a whatever percent chance to get a hero from this pool. But then within that pool, there's like the common ones, which are usually the shitty characters, and then there's the rarer ones, you know, in the legendary pool, and those are the good ones. And
wasn't there something like, I think his name was like Greed or something like that, was like way lower chance? Or,
yeah,
like, there's a few of them. That happened like quite a while ago as well. I feel like there was drama about that almost like in the summer or like the fall.
Yeah, like he's 6-8 months.
They do that if they just let people know like ahead of time, because now that people know that, they're not like frustrated by it. Like I kind of already knew, I guess, going into the game originally, since we're like a month or two late, that Hatsa just had a rarer chance. So I was just like, oh, she's really good, and she's just like the most rare character. Fine, like
that's fine.
To me, it was like okay because I knew that. But I guess like if you didn't know that and you were pulling really hard, and you're like, why can't I get her? It does make sense. Like if you're going to show the rates of the characters drop, or, you know, to get from a specific pool, you might as well just show like if it's different in that pool, because then what does that pool really even mean? If all the characters in there have completely different rates.
That also borders the line of like, is that legal? Like,
yeah,
is that,
I'm wondering,
you know, like it's like, this is very interesting. Like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And I mean, I think it's also just a lesson of like, people will figure it out. And if you do that, they're going to think you're just trying to pull the wool over their eyes. So definitely with our game, it's like, we want you to understand what you're getting yourself into. And I think that's a good thing, is we have these discussions now so that if people are commenting on this video and are like, listen, you nerfed my unit, I revolt. It's like we should understand people's things, because as a gamer myself, I already have a hunch of how people will receive it. And I think that balance as a whole is something that has to be done very tactfully. It's a delicate balance of like, we want the game to function properly. We don't want one unit to just break the game. But if one unit is breaking our game, then we probably have other issues.
Well, and it begs the question, what is the proper way? So like, we release a new champion as part of a summoning banner or whatever that we're adding, a void legendary to the game. It has to be good. If it's not good, everyone's gonna be like, what is this trash? Like, why are you bothering with this? This just dilutes the pool. You're just hurting our shards. So you have to make it good. But how are you possibly going to know? Like, there is no way. I don't care how smart you are. There's no substitute for like hundreds of thousands of players playing something and giving you that data of like, oh my goodness, we didn't know it would have a 79% win rate in the arena. Holy cow. You're just not going to know that. So what is the proper way? Because you have to make it good, and you're not going to know, you're not going to have enough data until it hits the game. So I guess I'll kick it off to Sham. What is the proper way for a game developer to handle that situation? Because it's obviously going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this. So a couple things. One, this culture of kind of transparency, I think, is super key, and having like a consistent and truthful conversation with the community is super huge, right? I think just that will help a lot, right? Because what people are going to see is they're going to see exactly that. They have a 79% win rate. They are crushing every single team for PvP, let's say, is going to have that champion. Every single team for, let's say, Guild Boss is going to have that champion, or whatever the actual issue is. And then well, how do you handle it from there? Well, if we did on a banner and some people, went hard and they spent a bunch of money, right? They invested. They went after getting that character. Well, then I really like the Epic 7. I think the example that you gave, where it's like, okay, well, if we make a change to a champion, and it's a significant change, especially if it's a nerf. So if it's a benefit, then come on, enjoy. But if it's like if it's a nerf or a significant change, I love that idea of like having a currency, trade-in policy, something like that's going to give you back the resources that you've invested. So you can feel confident, like, it's like it's not like a money back guarantee effectively, but it's like an investment. Like if we mess up on something as a developer, if we mess up something, we misbalance it, we did underestimate it, overestimate, whatever it is. I think it's the players' rights, so to have that kind of like respected, right, and not just taken away from them and say, well, sorry, buddy, and especially and like, what we would never ever want to do is, I guess, do something hidden behind the player base that is going to make that effect, just because we're trying to like. We're going to hide it from, like you said, people will find out. Period. The game data will be data mined. Period. It's not rocket science. It's very easy. They're simple tools that can do it. So we just expect that, and we just have a great conversation with the players, and we keep it consistent. And I think it's as simple as that. I mean, obviously, we are going to make those mistakes, and that's, I think, the thing. If you start with that, and you don't think you're just going to not make mistakes, you're too smart for it. I don't think it's that hard.
I think it's also different in Epic 7 versus something like Raid, because I can't guarantee a character in Raid really ever. Even with the 20 times, hypothetically, I could spend thousands and miss.
No, they do guaranteed events. They do guaranteed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And for sure. And in those situations, it's more one-to-one. But in Epic 7, there is a pity. If I do 120 pulls, I get that character, no matter what. I can get it early, obviously, but every banner has a pity of
every single one, 100%.
Every single one. This one, it's 120 pulls. Every character in the game. And so, hypothetically, if you play long enough, all the core units is like, oh, this Tamarin banner is coming up. You have to get her for PvE. This character is coming out. You have to get it for PvP. Yada yada yada. And so, when you do that and you get a character, you are almost like, I've used up one pity. I've used up enough currency to do one pity. I know I'm getting that character. And so if they nerf it, it's like, well, I could have pitied the next character. I've made a decision to get this character, and now you've changed it. And I think that's why they do it, because hypothetically, you could just wait for anyone and get them. And so it's like, well, we'll give you the choice because you chose this character of all the characters to get.
Right.
We nerfed it. Now choose the one that you want instead. Kind of thing. And so that's different, because if you nerf my Mountain King and it's like, well, I'll just choose Duchess instead, that isn't necessarily one-to-one. It's, as you kind of said, it's like, I hope they nerf my random unit that I got, because I'll just choose the way better one, right?
Yeah.
So it's weird.
That's a really good point, because maybe it isn't just like the, I mean, and I don't think it is, because I think the problem would be if we were doing this often enough, and I think we would actually want to be doing a fair amount of balancing in a game like this. Where it's been proven to be the best way. Like Marvel Snap, Hearthstone, any of the card games where they're like constantly kind of like playing around and adjusting and doing things. They have a really vibrant and strong community, and that's what we're all about, right? So I think it's important that we are tweaking things and make, not necessarily nerfing things all the time, but making sure that things are in balance, or as in balance as they can be. So yeah, maybe it's not like a 1-to-1. Okay, yeah, you can pick anything from the pool, but it's like, hey, this is another character that kind of fits into that same pool, or another set of characters, and you can pull from that pool, or you get a resource that you can use. I just think that if you can find some parity in there, and maybe that's a conversation with the community once the game starts to get some traction, we've actually tested things. But I don't know. I think if you're gonna make a big change like that, the players deserve something. The players that have that champion, however they got them, deserve something from it. And that's my personal point of view.
Yeah, Dirk, did you want to get in there at all? Or?
Yeah, I think nerfing, I think, is absolutely, like, in these kind of games, like in League is fine. You can nerf and buff characters every single season just to freshen the meta. But in this, like, just due to the nature of having to like gamble and spend so much to get characters, when you get something, and like even once you get it, you have to invest a lot of resources into like maxing it. I think you just can't really nerf. Like, only if you exhaust all your other options. And I think the options would be like, first of all, is like, does this character, like, we know it's overpowered, but is it like breaking the game? No. Okay, then we could probably let it slide. Like, it'll just be the new strongest. There's always going to be a strongest. Is this acceptable as the strongest?
Like
yeah, so yeah, that's why Boreas is kind of like, all right, he's not usable everywhere. Can't really use him as single target. And then you could always add more content in. Like, all they do is make guys immune to freeze. Now, suddenly Boreas isn't even that good. Like, there's ways you can design the game with new content where his level of power creep won't make other characters completely obsolete. Because now all of a sudden you're like, well, shit, now Comet is better than Boreas. He wasn't, but these guys can't be frozen. Boreas loses his massive damage. Now Comet's the king again. Like, it's that easy. Or even like in cases of like Praetus. Praetus is like, when we say Boreas is overpowered, Praetus is like on another level. I'm assuming he's just already super rare because they didn't nerf his drop rate at all. So I'm guessing it was already just the rarest, but he's like beyond broken, and that's a case where it might be even like too hard with future content to balance because he almost has no weakness, but like he does a lot of true damage. So maybe like one solution would be just start releasing enemies that don't have high defenses and just have giant HP pool, so you don't have to do so much true damage to get through. And that would actually also help other. Sorry, what's that, Red?
Oh, you're good. I was gonna say, to your point, we've seen them like Raid OGs will remember, in terms of releasing new characters to counter things instead of nerfing. In the early days of Raid, every single team was Arbiter, Boost, and then you nuke. And so Plarium said, okay, instead of just demolishing Arbiter and making her worthless, we're gonna do a fusion for Torment and just get mass Torments out there. And now, now when you turn meter boost, your team just gets frozen and you're dead. And
the PvP end, that's the way more fun ways. Release counters to the card. And then the same is true in card games.
A turns into B turns into C.
Only when you can't like possibly design new content that the broken character like is still broken in. And you're like, well, geez, he's just the best in everything. There's nothing we can like, no way to design around it. And then, like it makes everyone else completely obsolete. And then also, again, you want to build a buff older shady characters to make them better too is another good option. Like rather than nerfing the best character, bring other worse characters up. But if everyone gets buffed up to that level, if now the game is just like easy mode and it's no longer fun to play, you can obviously do it. Only then I think it's okay to probably nerf, and you better have a full transparency.
A nice solution for those people.
And then and like give good refunds like in resources. They went the worst, completely wrong way, I think, of just like nerfing the drop rates. That just turns into like, well
now it's just harder to get that insane thing.
Right? Everyone who got them is just like the king of the game now, and then everyone else is just like feels hopeless. Like, well, I guess I'll just never have.
I guess I won't play. So that's probably the feeling.
I don't get to
I'll never catch up.
It's an interesting thing because like if you're wiping waves with Seer, like I don't really care that much because she's not ruining everyone's day in PvP. You know what I mean? But there is an issue if it's like one unit is just auto lock. I get annoyed with it already with like that Sun Wukong. He's so versatile that everyone just locks it. I'm like, this is getting boring to play against, honestly. And I do like that comment of almost like releasing counters. That can be a strat. In Epic 7, they do that a lot. Is like I've mentioned it a few times that with Epic 7, there's such strong counters that sometimes it's like, if you pick this unit, that's fine. But if I pick this unit, you lose because it counters it so hard. And then you can sometimes pick a different unit that counters that one. But like there's a guy, Last Rider Crow. And if you do an area of effect, I just shield up the entire team and my cooldowns drop. And it's like, you better bring single target or you're going to have a tough time against him. And there are some units that they kind of made the joke about it called the 7 disasters. They're so OP or like they're so strong that it's like you almost need one of the other disasters to deal with them. And so it's like a newer player is going to have a hard time until you start getting some of these counters. But long term, you can usually deal with everyone. And I think that counterplay and having those options and meaningful counterplay is really cool. You know, if you counterattack, I kill your unit. You know, like some crazy stuff where it's like you can pick Valkyrie. She's got this crazy shield, this turn meter stuff, but if you do a counterattack, I'm gonna nuke your team or something like that. Hefrek, I think, is a really good example. Hefrek, if someone on my team dies, I'm gonna nuke your team. And there's ways to completely mitigate the other team's decisions if they don't draft smart. But in PvE, you know, I think there needs to be some heroes here and there. But also, I think we need to be smart enough to be like, well, what about those units that aren't the heroes of the game and aren't doing well? Is there a moment to make them shine with new content? Like the new boss of the city, Amius or whatever his name is, this rotation that I think her name's like Morrigan or something like that. She's this random like turn
Morrigan because of her heal block.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then every turn there's just a heal reduction no matter what. And she went from I've never even built her to like I just put her on the team and it made it so easy. Yeah, God mode tool to have on the team. And so the hope is there's enough content and things that you're gonna find uses for your different units and you know, almost that idea of like let's buff the weak ones instead of nuking the really good unit that you're excited to use. So
yeah, I mean, like the content diversity is such a huge thing. Like for making, especially if, you know, we're looking at having lots of champions when we at launch. But yeah, making it so not every champion is going to be great, but I think every champion should have a spot somewhere, or at least you know everyone above a certain rarity should have a spot somewhere. You know what I mean? And I feel like the thing that like Dirk was saying, the thing that we have to really think about and consider is when someone comes in and they're just great everywhere. And I hopefully we'll see that like in our internal testing in early phases. Not hopefully, we will see that in early phases of testing and people when they're testing in the alpha and beta. We'll see it, but yeah, I mean, just like back to like the idea of like nerfs. I mean, I guess we've kind of like talked through it. Like, if I'm honest, like the big bad things to do in my mind are nerfing without telling. That's like not great. We'll just put it there. Yeah, not great. And then kind of like just nerfing without kind of giving back. Like somebody in a game like this, right? In a game like League and other games where there's just like a shifting meta. It's like whatever. Like people are like, okay, cool. Well, I'll just try another champion. I'll just go move to something else. Where you're collecting something, and the point of the game, you know, it's a hero collector. The point of the game is to be collecting heroes and building them up and making your roster really great and cool. Like it just sucks when you're like the one you put up on your stand of your like big collection of characters. They're like, actually now he's just brown and he's got kind of crap all over him. It's like, hold on, what? Where did this come from?
Embarrassed to show him off now. Like, oh.
Yeah,
he used to be good, but then they nerfed him. So,
and I would wonder, or I'd love to ask, you know, if you found out this unit is being used 98% of the time. They are doing 40% more damage than everyone else. I mean, that's a balancing issue for us. But if you found out like someone was that egregiously better than everyone else, how long does that stay fun to use as well? Where it's just every single person's using it, you fight them, they fight you, and it's just the only choice. Then I think that's sometimes can get a little dicey. But that open dialogue and even just showing some of the data of like, look at how much this is overperforming. And, I think any reasonable person can look at that and be like, okay, I get it. Let's wrangle it back. But I also think that we, as you said, is like, if we make that mistake and we give you your new favorite thing and you love it, and then we have to nerf it, is like, we don't just get off with it. We don't just get off scotch-free. We have to make right, because we made an error in testing. We made an error in kit design. We made an error in recognizing what we were doing. But you as a player who did recognize and said, I'm going all in on that unit, if we take that away, no, that's an us issue. That's not a you issue. At least that's the way I feel about it. I might get fired from this project. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, stay on after this. We'll have a chat for a little bit after this call. There,
but
let's have a quick conversation. No. I mean, it's a minimum pull-ups, right? Obviously, Brad has experienced that. He's got, he didn't have this set up on Zoom, so obviously that's going to be pull-ups. But for us, it would be the whole team, because that's a failure at so many different levels, and that's, I guess, this is almost another question. That it's kind of adjacent to this. How do you think these things happen? Like, I feel like if you give this to somebody, if you gave any of those characters to me for 1 minute, let me read through their kit and let me play them in one level, I'll tell you, no, they're broken in 1 minute. So how does it get? You said right.
I'll tell you. Do you want to know? Do you want to know?
Yeah, let me hear this.
It's not because of these people that care or the player base. It's because of the guy that's sitting up there that says, we need more profit this month than last month. And then next month we need even more profit. And banner sales are down. I think it is a lot of those situations. And actually a fun thing that I saw on Twitter the one time was some of the Division. If you've never played the Division game, it's like a looter shooter, third-person shooter. There's a big debate going on of like, only buff stuff, never nerf it, and new guns releasing. And he kind of made a statement like, if we put out a balanced gun, most people don't care. It has to have some sort of power creep or do something new or solve a problem, or else no one cares. And if no one cares, why are we spending a bunch of dev time and money on it if no one cares? You know what I mean? And so I think that's one of the things, is almost like, are we going to sell power and power creep, or are we going to sell new tools to work in new content that we've also created? And again, that's kind of a thing we'll need to figure out over time. But I don't know. I think that some of these things are obvious. I notice them a lot. I'm a big kind of I don't know, complainer in games, because I recognize an issue very early, and sometimes I recognize the issue before other people, and that's why sometimes I get roasted as like a hater when I cover games. But it's like, you're gonna realize this too. Like, I know you're gonna realize that this resource is too scarce, or this character is too strong, or this character's not strong enough, or whatever it is. And so as long as we have at least some of our eyes on it, I hope that this doesn't happen too often. Real gamers behind it. So
seriously though, like it just feels like that's all it should really take, is like, and I imagine as content creators and with your work with you and Brad maybe specifically, when you guys have worked with like these bigger companies and you've been in these conversations where they're talking about balancing and stuff like that, are you kind of like talking about like, oh, like, please fix this and that and that and that, and they're like, yeah, and then they don't fix it? Or is it like I guess I would want to and you don't talk about any specifics, but broadly, do you feel like it's like you're heard and then there's something happens, or it's like, oh well, we have to there's a lot of constraints? And what's that conversation like?
You want me to go first, or you want to go, Michael?
You can go first.
Yeah, having been in many of these different situations with game developers, from Blizzard to Plarium and all different games, doing this for 20 years, very rarely do you get your input to someone who can actually make a decision. It's almost never. You're usually speaking to a community director or some sort of content creator program, facilitator. You're not talking to the lead developer. It's not getting to that person's desk. Normally, like, just to be candid with people, I quit even talking in the Raid Shadow Legends content creator channel. I haven't talked in there in probably 3 years, because what I realized in the first year and a half was it's just lip service. Like I'm saying something and they're saying, we appreciate your feedback, we'll make sure they hear it. And after a year and a half, you're like, no one's hearing this feedback. All I'm doing is speaking into a vacuum that wants to make me feel special. So why am I wasting my time? So like, you just never really speak to those people, at least in my experiences. That's what's cool about us, is like the people that are posting feedback in our Discord server, or they're joining our brainstorm sessions. They're talking to the people at the top. They're talking to the people that make multi-million-dollar decisions. They're not talking to, managers or something. So that's a differentiator for us. You can let me know if your experience is different, Michael, but that's been mine.
And just to jump on that as well, is like, if this game launches and I'm playing it, I will be the guy that recognizes, like, what are we doing here? How did this slip through the cracks? And I will be the guy tirading as well. Internally, I'm going to be like, no, we have to fix this or else we're in trouble, right? But yeah, like as Brad was saying, is like sometimes either the game is like too far along that they can't fix it. Anthem was one of those things, unfortunately. I did a lot of feedback on Anthem, and it was like, this has so much potential, but you have to fix a few of these things. Some of the flight stuff did get addressed, and that was cool. But there's some issues with like aim assist, and like obviously there's just not enough quests and stuff, and like there was so much that it didn't matter what we said, they were not going to fix it. Bungie with Destiny, very similar. I've given feedback multiple times, and I still see a couple of things in the game that they've never changed it. Other things they've responded pretty well to, but the only game that I've played or done anything where they actually made a change and I've seen it in game is Wayfinder. One of the characters, I told him, I was like, no one will play this unit. It's terrible. It is like, if you look like statistically not great, but also just like, it doesn't feel fun to play. And I kind of showed them, they changed the kit. And I don't know if I'm allowed to like say which one, but they changed the kit. And I wasn't the only one who said it, thank God. But other people mentioned, they're just like, yeah, it's just like boring. It's kind of clunky. It doesn't seem to have a lot of synergy. And they were able to make that change kind of thing.
It's just one of those things like, well, no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's just like, I want people to talk to us, and like if they recognize something, I want to hopefully be the team that can fix it. Obviously it's tough sometimes, but I think if everyone is recognizing the same problem, that is our problem. It is something that we need to fix, and I just hope that we don't have too many of them that that slip through the cracks somehow.
It's funny because like this is one of the things I'm always thinking about when we're kind of designing, back end stuff, and we're designing things to be designed and quickly redesign and adjust and stuff like that. But it's also something that I guess this is a question that I put out to you guys. Like, do you feel like people always really know what they want? So like, I'll give you an example. The swapping mechanic in Watcher of Realms right now, right? I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. So just to quickly tell you what it is, it doesn't cost anything to switch gear on characters. So what you would do when you would go to try to do new content, you would put new gear on, you would move your gear to the characters that were in the content, and then you would progress, and then you'd move it back. And it was like such a chore. And then everyone was like, oh, please give us a swap, right? And they gave it to us. And now I feel like I'm just swapping. That's all I'm doing. I'm just like sitting there swapping. And now I don't care about gear as much, right? I don't care about getting gear because now I just need 6, 8, 10, maybe 10 sets, let's say, of gear. I move it around. I've got a couple of healing sets. I've got a couple of defense sets. I've got a couple of nuking sets. And it's like, I don't really care that much about gear. I want the pinnacle of gear after a short amount of time. So I don't know. That's the thing that I'm kind of still wrestling with, is like, how do we solve, and this kind of fits into that nerfing type of deal, right? How do we solve for, you have an opinion and everyone thinks that, right? Because it seems obvious. It seems like the right thing to do, but then actually it isn't, like for whatever reason it isn't. It's taking away a core of what you love about whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so how do you feel like as a player, would you want to hear a long-winded response as to why we disagree with a change as an example? Or would you would you just want us to be like, okay, we'll give it to you for a little while, but we're probably going to take it away? Like, what would you guys want? What would you as a player want in those scenarios?
Don't give it and take it away.
Yeah, don't give it and take it away.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to do it, like at least explain why. I've seen a lot of anger in the Destiny community because sometimes they go, they have a lot of like good discussion with the community, and then they go radio silent for a while, and they're like, hey, like what's changing, what isn't changing, and
they just don't say anything. They're just like, no.
Yeah, they just go radio silent, and things change, and people don't feel heard, and it is a lot of work to have an open communication line with the community and like a finger on the pulse kind of thing. I think it's definitely important, but I don't
it's a
think
tricky one, right? Like it's something I think about a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think as long as it's not on every single change. Like we shouldn't be required to be like, okay, well, this is happening for this reason on everything. But if it's a point of contention, if it's a big thing, if it was, hey, this is the reason we have to nerf this unit. Like here's the status, here's the data, this is why they're so good. And sometimes in the patch notes for Destiny, they're like, these weapons are just outperforming all the other classes. We had to wrangle them in. But other stuff usually does get brought up. And with Destiny, I definitely think that they do like, it's almost seasons. It's like snipers are going to be good this 3 months. Now rockets are the best DPS. Now this, and I think that they massage it themselves. I think they do it on purpose, because it's too it's too apparent that it's like the handguns are all of a sudden a lot better than the auto rifle. Like this seems pretty obvious to me. And sometimes what they'll do too, though, which is almost an interesting thing, is they'll do like the artifact system or like the augments, and so they give you the option to like buff up some of those weapons yourself because you can get like special perks. And so if we notice that some units aren't getting used much, maybe we just do some cool events in game where the demon faction or whatever it would be, gets a bonus this month, and you can use them in content and try some new teams with that or whatever. We got to be creative as well to do that. Yeah,
that's a good answer, and it kind of like sums up what we've said in a lot of ways. It's basically just like when there's a major thing. So like in general, we are going to be looking out for hopefully all developers, but we definitely are going to be looking out for like the health of the game, the health of the community, the excitement. We want to be creative and make things fun. That's like the core. If there is like, oh shoot, we messed up, Brad owes 100 pull-ups, Dirk owes 100 pull-ups. It's rough. It's rough.
People probably don't understand this, our internal punishment system.
So. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to understand. It's just to get you guys.
By the end of it all, we're going to be these jacked.
If you could tell that my shoulders are twice as big, it's from working at Fateless for 4 months. It's doing all these damn pull-ups.
I did it's Fateless, but a lot of people will accidentally type it in their phone and they'll get Fatless. And so I just wanted to make sure that we really
cover all
into that, the bulked up. No, but I really think that when there is a problem and there is something that we're going to change and there is a nerf, it's like we address it head on. There's no hiding in the shadows. There's no going radio silent. That's like we can't go radio silent. How do we can't shut up.
And not reducing the drop rate of it. Like, that's a problem, but it'll be a small problem.
That happened recently. What is with companies doing that? Valheim's official Discord got hacked and like stolen from them, and then they were putting out they were tagging everybody and being like, hey, we developed this new game, download it and try it, and it was a virus. And
wow,
and Valheim didn't even say anything on like their Twitter.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And because I went and looked like 5 hours later. I was like, why aren't? Because I saw it like posted on Reddit, like don't go on Valheim's Discord, and I was like, why aren't they saying anything? Like they're not even like letting people know. It's just so it's super weird sometimes.
Maybe they were like, you know what? We've cashed in on Valheim. We need a little extra cash. We are gonna hack our Discord server. Of course, that's not what they did. I'm just kidding, but yeah, that's pretty funny. Well, I don't know about you guys. This feels like we've kind of wrapped it up. This is we've had a good discussion. Really appreciate you guys coming. If anyone has anything they want to shout out or anything they want to say at the end, let's do that. But otherwise, let's get out of here.
Yeah, sounds good.
Easy as that.
Yeah, well,
Great chat.
that'll do it for this week's episode. And yeah, we'll have all the links you need down below and all that good stuff. Thanks for joining Mtash and Dirk and Sham. We'll see you soon in the next one. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.